Allen Lund Company has new offices in Ogden, Utah and Indianapolis, Indiana. Check allenlund.com to reach them.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Redding.
Who is a good broker and who is a bad broker? It's not just an academic question, as getting a bad broker can put you in a real financial bind. I'll get some advice from Tom Crowley and Aaron Lynch of OOIDA's Compliance Department. As trucking companies and policymakers rush to get electric trucks on the road, John Houseleden of the Minnesota Trucking Association has a request. Take a breath. The association has a comprehensive report out on the topic. And finally, Marty Ellis has been thinking about topics that range from truckers who are paid by the hour with overtime pay to truck ownership. I'll talk with the man who drives the spirit of the American trucker. But first, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. For the second year in a row, the California legislature has sent a bill to Governor Gavin Newsom's desk that would ban driverless semis from roadways. Now we wait to see if he signs it. The governor vetoed an almost identical measure last year, deeming it unnecessary. Assembly Bill 2286 would require a human safety operator to be inside an autonomous vehicle that weighs more than 10,000 pounds while it's running, whether that be for testing, transporting goods, or transporting passengers. It would also require truck makers to report any collisions that happen in autonomous mode within 10 days. Things have changed a bit since Governor Newsom vetoed last year's bill. A number of high-profile incidents involving autonomous vehicles have made national headlines. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has since opened up investigations into 3 autonomous vehicle companies, Cruise, Waymo, and Zoox, in response. The public safety concerns are what pushed Assembly Bill 2286 toward passage. Support has come from groups like the Teamsters, who are also worried about job losses. Trade groups like the Autonomous Vehicle Industry Association argue that driverless vehicles hold the promise of improving public safety and supply chain efficiency. There are a lot of steps that still need to be taken, but Maryland just took a big step forward in their bid to rebuild Baltimore's Francis Scott Key Bridge. The Maryland Transportation Authority Board approved a $73 million contract for the first phase of the project on Thursday. Kiewit Infrastructure got the contract. State officials promised they would work to quickly rebuild the Key Bridge shortly after it collapsed in March. And while this is a step forward, the road will be long. The estimated timeline for building and opening a new Key Bridge is 2028. The project, expected to cost upwards of $2 billion, will come with safeguards to prevent a similar collision from happening again. Officials have said the new bridge will be a bit taller than the old one to accommodate even larger ships entering Baltimore's harbor. The original Key Bridge took 5 years to build and opened in 1977. The OOIDA Foundation's latest report on market conditions shows more of the same. The outlook remains negative. The July report shows that volume and demand remain flat and operating costs remain high. However, capacity and rates continue to firm up. Looking forward, experts are cautiously optimistic about a turnaround, but it's clear from the Foundation's July data that it's not here yet. Driver compensation continues to lag right along with the freight recession. A new report from Conversion Interactive Agency shows that weekly pay for both company drivers and owner-operators was down in the first quarter of this year compared with the back end of 2023. For company drivers, the decline was about 7.5% to just over $1,600. For owner-operators, the decline was less pronounced, a decrease of 2.2% to $4,500 a week. The data tracks with what other experts are seeing out there, as the OOIDA Foundation Market Report has showed us. The Teamsters Canada Rail Conference is fighting the Canadian government's intervention of their labor dispute with the railroads. 4 challenges were filed on Thursday. The Teamsters are asking the Canadian Federal Court of Appeals to step in and reverse an order that forced employees back to work. The union said the right to collectively bargain is a constitutional guarantee, and without it, unions lose leverage to negotiate better wages and safer working conditions for all Canadians. The union is trying to make sure precedent isn't set here, one in which the government can block a strike. Lockouts kept employees off the job at Canadian National and Canadian Pacific Kansas City last week. They came to an end with the government ordering everyone back to work while the arbitration process plays out. Someone out there is holding more than $1 million worth of stolen race cars and parts. They were stolen out of the back of a tractor-trailer in Pompano Beach, Florida this past weekend. NBC Miami spoke to the owner of the Porsche racing facility where it happened. He said 2 people drove into his parking lot on Sunday night, and about 20 minutes later, someone drove off with a tractor-trailer that had 4 race cars, parts, and other gear worth about $1.5 million inside. The owner hired a private investigator who was able to track down the tractor, but the trailer and everything inside are gone. Police are working the case but haven't said whether they have any leads at this time. A truck carrying barrels of brake fluid crashed on Interstate 75 South in Georgia early Friday morning, causing a fire, a leak, and then explosion. The Cobb County Fire Department said the semi crashed into a support beam. The fire is out, but the chemical spill is a concern. The good news here is that no one appears to have been injured. No other vehicles were involved, and the truck driver wasn't hurt. Traffic was being diverted on Friday morning. Stay up to date with the latest road conditions there and elsewhere throughout the United States by heading to landline.media, clicking on the Resources tab, and scrolling down to Road Conditions for Truckers. Time is running out for drivers to take advantage of early bird specials for OIDA's upcoming Truck to Success course. The 3-day seminar, designed for both prospective and current owner-operators, provides in-depth guidance on a wide range of topics geared toward helping you find success in the trucking industry. Attendees learn the ins and outs of developing a business plan, permits and licensing, insurance, drug and alcohol testing requirements, brokers and factoring, taxes, and more. This year's course will be held over 3 days starting October 22nd in Blue Springs, Missouri, a stone's throw from OIDA headquarters. There are 2 ways to attend, in person or virtually. Those who register before this Sunday, September 1st, get $50 off the total price, as well as a 1-year OIDA membership. Charles Sperry, research analyst for the OIDA Foundation and a Truck to Success presenter, says truckers get the most bang for their buck attending in person.
One of the most interesting things that I've seen time and time again is that, especially at like truck shows and stuff like that, people come up and talk to you. And the ones that have come up and spoken about their experience of Truck to Success, one of the primary things that they've always talked about is the fact that they were right there with other people, making face-to-face contact with experts in the industry, and they were able to talk to them about their specific problems that they may have faced. Maybe it's a problem that everybody faces, or maybe it's a problem that's just unique to their own experience. Regardless, they were actually able to talk to these people and get the answers that they needed. And I think that one of the things that we tend to forget, especially in our very digital age, where everybody's connected online and whatnot, that face-to-face connection is incredibly important, both in business, if you're talking to a broker and trying to make that business connection, or trying to talk to a shipper and secure your own little lane. That face-to-face connection is just invaluable. It's something that you cannot replace just looking at a video on a screen.
For those attending the event in person, the cost is $495 and comes with access to recordings of the course for 1 year. Online attendance is available at a cost of $250. Virtual attendees will have access to course materials provided for 3 months. For more information, head to trucktosuccess.com. And finally, a truck spilled its load of red peppers on Highway 101 in Santa Maria, California this week, and it escalated quickly. Turns out the truck hit a sign that was housing a massive beehive. Inside that were thousands of bees who were not happy with all the commotion. Once the flatbed overturned and the red peppers spilled out, so did the bees. A beekeeper was called out and got the situation under control. And best of all, nobody was hurt. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. Next, I'll discuss telling which broker is good and which is bad with Tom Crowley and Aaron Lynch of OOIDA's Compliance Department. Scott Thompson covers a report on truck electrification with John Housladen of the Minnesota Trucking Association, and Spirit driver Marty Ellis talks about detention time, hourly versus mileage pay, and more. We'll be back in just a moment with more news and information. I'm Mark Rettig, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Every year, 28 million people are trafficked globally. The Your Roads, Their Freedom campaign seeks to raise awareness in the transport industry. Truck and bus drivers, be vigilant on the roads. If you see something suspicious, text 233-733 or be free.
Truckdown.com. Whenever you have a breakdown, you need truckdown.com. 24/7 access to 40,000 verified heavy-duty repair vendors nationwide. Truckdown verified, vendor qualified. Truckdown.com.
Firestone tires are for more of everything, with more durability for more miles and more confidence in your fleet. Firestone's tested tires help fleets save with value where it matters most. Learn more at bridgestonenationalfleet.com/4moremiles.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Landline now. Welcome back. Who is a good broker and who is a bad broker? It's not just an academic question, as getting a bad broker can put you in a real financial bind. So how do you tell? Here to discuss that and more are Tom Crowley and Aaron Lynch of OOIDA's Compliance Department. Guys, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having us, Mark.
Thanks as always, Mark. Good to be here.
Well, glad to have you both with me here. And this is, of course, a really important topic. We've talked a lot about how to tell who the bad brokers are, but it's a lot harder to figure out who the good brokers are. So what are the signs to look for to figure out that this is a good broker?
Well, as we've talked about, previously, do your due diligence. Check them out on the FMCSA's website, on the Safer site. Make sure that they've been around for a minute and that they, are not switching up their bonds. But then beyond that, it really comes to, looking at their broker carrier agreement. Do they have a lot of catches in there? One thing that I've seen a lot of lately, of course, everybody wants to do tracking. And I've seen brokers that actually put in their, and as I say this, I'm sure there's many drivers going to know who I'm talking about. There's brokers that want to put in there, if tracking fails, we'll reduce your rate by 20%. Oh, yeah, that's a big one going on.
So if their equipment that they put in your truck fails.
Well, it's tracking. Usually they want to track your cell phone or something like that.
So you got to download an app or something.
Yeah, or macro point or whatever. But if it fails at any point, your phone goes dead, or I believe that the broker possibly makes it fail at some point because, hey, that's 20% that they didn't pay out on. Just that quick.
There's a lot of areas in the country that truckers go into where there's essentially no cell phone service for their service. I mean, I've had that happen, and I'm on one of the big ones.
I agree. Yeah, that's that. So talking about bad brokers, that's one of the things to look for. If they've got a reduction in there, or some of them have $200 if tracking fails, or just on and on and on, all kinds of stuff. And this is just a way for brokers to increase their revenue. They increase their Friday night slush fund or whatever they're doing with it. But it takes money right out of your pocket with rates as slim as they are. Who can afford to – I mean, let's flip it around. If you're the broker and you know right off the bat that you're going to probably reduce a rate by 20%, you can promise them whatever and know that, you're going to pay them 20% less.
Jeez.
Yeah.
It's like they keep finding new ways to screw people. I just don't understand that.
Yeah. Well,
that allows you to raise your rates on the load boards, though, to get more traction on your loads. That's more of an advertisement as far as that goes. It's attractive.
Yeah. They put the rates out there. We pay a little bit better. Of course, at the end, do they really? So as far as bad brokers, good brokers, look at their broker carrier contract. And talk to your buddies at Haul for 'em. Find out what's really happened. Look at those reviews online. I believe we've got something with RTS Credit where you can go on our website and run a credit background. Now, keep in mind that's not an actual like a FICO score credit. That is a credit as far as how long does it take them to pay, and do they usually pay their bills. So you can go to that website and kind of look at them there. I mean, brokers have got really emboldened and embrazen the last probably 10 years to the point where they just think they can do pretty much anything they want. I mean, as we know, the FMCSA doesn't enforce much of the regulations on brokers. I mean, they require them to have a brokerage license and to have a bond. But other than that, have you ever seen a broker get audited?
No. Yeah, of
Every
course.
carrier out there has been audited at least once, at least an entrance audit. Most of them more than once. I've yet to see a broker be audited.
Well, and I'll add to what Tom was saying. Contrary to popular belief, networking is not dead. I mean, network with the people at truck stops, network with your buddies, your friends, people that have used brokers in the past that you're interested in. Build rapport and relationships with people. That's a part of what you're supposed to do when you run a business. You need people to succeed. It can't just be you only. It can't be that vantage point. So many times it's you against the world, and sometimes it may feel that way, but you can't run a successful business doing that. You need to build these relationships and build that rapport over years to be able to utilize good and sometimes bad brokers to haul loads.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because this is one of the things I tell people is Facebook is not just for posting memes and arguing politics. There's a lot of trucking groups on there, and I see people get on there and say, does anybody know about such and such broker? Does anybody know about such and such carrier? Thinking about going to work for them. And, you're going to get some bull in the comments, but if you get a couple of people that have actually worked with that broker, that's valuable.
It is, Mark. And like you said, and like Aaron said, networking, looking to all avenues for information. You're not just looking for one. I mentioned the RTS website as far as credit checks on whether they pay their bills, but that's just one area. And Facebook, that's another area. These different social media apps or groups that you can be a part of, you can get a lot of valuable information because, if people are on there talking about a certain broker that they're not paying, and just because they don't pay doesn't mean the load boards won't let them on their sites. They'll still let them out there, as long as they have an active brokerage authority. These load boards, hey, they make money off every load posted, so they're going to let them on there, and they'll let them keep putting out bullcrap loads that don't pay, and you want to know. And the load boards, the information that you get off the load boards, I'm not going to say discard it, but don't take it as the end-all be-all. Because just because they're on a load board, the load boards have an interest in more brokers, more brokers, more brokers. That's who the load boards really cater to. The trucker, the small carrier, they're a captive audience. There's only so many places they can go to find loads. So the load boards know they got the carriers. It's the brokers that they're vying for.
Well, whoever's paying the money is the real customer.
Yeah. Well, and that's where the load boards got it, because they charge on both ends. But the brokers are they tend to cater to the brokers.
Okay. One of the things that I've heard from you all and some other folks here in the past is that it's best to develop a relationship with the broker and work with brokers who you know. But let's kind of take that back to someone who has gotten their authority. They're kind of new at this. How do you develop those connections? Aaron, you talk about networking. How do you do that part of the networking?
Well, I think a lot of it is through trial and error. You can't be afraid to take a loss here and there if it means that you can build a relationship that's beneficial to both parties in the long run. A lot of it's going to be just through tribulations and through time that's developed or accrued. You're not going to be a pro at this from day one. I don't care if you drove a truck for a company for 30 years and this is your first time out. It's a totally different ball game out there. So you have to be reasonable and temper your expectations, and you have to be willing to grow, and you have to be willing to put in phone calls. You have to be willing to meet with people. You have to be willing to put the time in. Instead of going to sleep on your 10-hour break and watching a movie, maybe you look at some Google reviews. Maybe you look at some trucking forums. YouTube's huge now. You may not love it, but there's some great information that you can gather from it. And some of those are paid for by people who work there. The company will do that. You got to watch out for that. But there are enough people out there that will give you legitimate reviews of, hey, this is my first year working for this company, or I've used this broker and was my experience. And if you digest that over a period of time, that's going to help you build these relationships because you're going to know what to look for. And the most important thing probably I can point to is the contract. You have to look and value what's in that contract and operate based off what that is. Don't be afraid to cold call these people. Don't be afraid to meet with them. I can't stress that enough.
Yeah, and contracts, this is something I've had an issue with forever, broker carrier contracts. If people didn't agree to the bullcrap that's in those contracts, then brokers wouldn't put it in there. It's not required to be in there. The requirements are very different. The contracts, these brokers, they constantly put stuff in their contracts that's beneficial to them and their customer at the owner-operator's expense. So read these contracts, and I know it's difficult to tell somebody, well, don't sign that contract. And I said, well, if I don't sign it, they won't load me. You know what? If enough people said, if there was some pushback from enough people want to say, well, it's just me, I'm just one. Yeah, but you're just one by yourself. But that's where the association gets, a group, get people together, and everybody refused to do it. And these brokers will change their ways. I mean, because without motor carriers, brokers are done. They've got nothing. They need the motor carrier. Motor carriers just need to stop letting them take advantage of them.
You mentioned that I'm just one. And one of the things I go back to is for years and years down at Landline Magazine, it seemed like every year around election time, they'd do a story about some election that was decided by one vote. That happens way more often than people realize. And that's the thing. One person can make a difference. But boy, if you're 10 or if you're 50.
Or, like the association, 150,000. If you get people together, and it's difficult because, as soon as you don't do it, somebody else comes along and they'll do it, and they'll do it cheaper. Well, how long are they going to be around? If people would stop agreeing to these egregious contracts, the industry has changed. A lot of people say, what's happened to the industry? How did it get like this? It didn't happen overnight. It was a slippery slope, from deregulation. Shortly after deregulation, I was trucking. There was some honor in the system. People lived up to their word. And brokers, all through the 90s, I hauled C.H. Robbins freight for the most part, but for different brokers, and never had a claim. Not that there wasn't one, but never had a claim come back on me. Now, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find even a newer carrier that hasn't had a claim, something that they bought, something that unjustly they were charged for.
And it was forced upon them.
Yeah. It only got like it is because people allow it.
Give us an example of that. When you talk about that.
Oh, produce is one of them. Somebody puts produce on their truck. If they don't pulp check it, they get a load of warm produce put on their truck, or something that's already got some decay in it. They take it to the receiver. The receiver kicks it. Then the broker says, well, let's get a reefer download. Let's look at this stuff. And, they get a reefer download and shows the reefer was fine, yet there's still decay. So somehow they're saying that load that was on your truck for 1 or 2 or 3 days, that's your fault. Well, if you didn't check it out good when it went on, you may end up buying it. And these brokers are not going to ask you. They're just not going to pay you. And then they will do what they call cross-collateralization and take the money from the other loads that broker owes you. And all of a sudden, and I talked to a guy late, I think it was just early this week, maybe late last week, that had several loads that he got screwed on. So you got to watch your backside.
And ever since the pandemic, they won't even allow you on the docks somewhere.
Yeah.
So that's another big problem. You're never able to see what you can actually do.
Well, guys, we've run out of time here. We could talk about this a long time, but thank you very much for your time and for the information.
Good to be here, Mark.
Thanks as always, Mark.
We'll be back in just a moment. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Today's rising costs affect everyone. Replace your harmonic damper with a genuine Vibertech TVD viscous damper to prevent costly repairs and downtime. Keep your money in your pocket and your truck on the road with Vibertech TVD. Recommended replacement at 500,000 miles or 15,000 hours.
Ready to make more money? Use a better load board. For a limited time, get 50% off Truckstop Load Board Pro. Just go to truckstop.com/go and enter promo code READY2024 when you purchase Load Board Pro.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
Welcome back to Landline Now. You know, there's been a lot of talk and action in recent years to electrify commercial trucks, but the Minnesota Trucking Association is urging everyone to take a breath after finding in a new report that the rush to make the change could lead to a whole host of problems. Joining us to break down what they found is the association's president, John Husladen. John, thanks for joining us. Let's get right into it with what you view as maybe the biggest takeaway from this comprehensive study your association conducted.
Well, what we tell our members is the biggest takeaway from the study is take a breath. Take a breath. Internal combustion engines are going to be the dominant source of energy to propel trucks for decades to come. And so business decisions need to take that into mind. And I think that's the biggest thing we tell our members, but outward facing, we really have to tell the government that too, that the potential of electrification for vehicles is real. It's being done with cars, and there then is sort of the myth. You take what you can do with a car, you apply it to a truck, and here we go, and we're just a few years down the road. Well, no, the ecosystem, the changes, the demand for heavy truck electrification are so vastly different that government really needs also to take a breath and say, whatever we're doing, let's not live in this fantasy that we're going to just leapfrog technology that's here and go to an end solution. It's just not going to happen. So that's the first point.
Is that a message that policymakers, politicians, whoever it may be, are they understanding that message? Is that a message that you are conveying to them? Because again, I think there is a real appetite for making something like this happen, and it makes sense on paper. But as we know, there are a lot of things that make sense on paper that just don't apply to the trucking industry as a whole. You talk about the challenges there. Is that something that is being received by the people that really need to hear that right now?
I'll tell you, it's a matter of where you tell the story. One of the things we've done in parallel is to engage in truck ride-alongs. And, we do these all the time. And we've done terminal visits, and we bring legislators. And, okay, those are good. They serve a purpose. But one of the things we learned, particularly in Minnesota, we have one party, the Democrats, controlling the governor's house and then the House of Representatives and the Senate. That one-party control, they're not particularly interested in our message, so how do we break through? So we've reached out to urban Democrats, and we've invited them for an hour-long truck ride in their district. And I got to tell you, we've gotten a lot of yeses, some no's, but we've gotten a lot of yeses. And what we do is we set up this hour experience, and we have employee drivers and independent contractors. And I tell you, the independent contractor story is fascinating because you see the pride, see the ownership. And so we get to talk not only about electrification, but we talk about business models, reality. But so we do a walk around the truck, we hop inside, we talk about the e-logs, we talk about what that means for driver hours and productivity. And this is all just neutral. This is just learning what it means to be a truck driver. And then we talk about what's the technology on the truck and if it has advanced technology and camera recorders and all of that. And then we start driving. And halfway through the drive, we pull up to a fueling station. And I tell you, this is the best part of it. We stop, and I'll turn to the driver, because here's what it is. It's the driver, it's the legislator, and me. I'm sitting in the sleeper bunk, just the three of us on a little field trip. And I'll stop when we've parked. We don't fuel, but we're like ready to fuel. And I ask the driver, hey, Joe, how many gallons do you take on at a time? How long does it take to fill? How far can you go on that fill? How many days would it last you? So we sort of get a baseline. And then I say, Joe, let's pretend this was an electric truck. How long would it take to charge? Well, hours, not minutes. How far could you go? 300 miles versus 1,200 miles. Well, how many times would you have to fuel in a day? Multiple times. Oh, and by the way, what would this do to your productivity and available on-duty and driving hours? It would kill it. So the legislators, to a person, male and female, will drive away from those little visits and they go, oh my, boy, we are a long way from heavy truck electrification. Ding, ding, ding. Light bulb goes on. It is the most impactful thing we do.
Yeah, and that is something that I wish happened more often across the country, because I think once you do understand, what the everyday life of a truck driver is, you understand that a lot of these things that people want to accomplish are not going to be accomplished in the timeline that they're looking at, and you kind of hit on the points there as the reason why. And you talk about in this report here specifically, and you mentioned in there as well, the challenges of electrifying a fleet. I mean, you're talking refueling time, which you mentioned there. There's also other challenges, right? The infrastructure just isn't there right now to meet the demand that they're hoping is going to be there. There's also a cost problem as well. Can you talk a little bit about what your report found on those two topics in particular?
Well, let's just start with the base unit. A brand new over-the-road truck, I don't know if it's overly chromed out, but you're $180,000 to $200,000. I mean, who can imagine we're talking those numbers today? But we are. The comparable battery electric truck for that sort of heavy long haul application, $480,000. $480,000, one truck, and we don't know what the used market is. So we start with that reality that how does that pencil out, and will customers pay more just because of the type of truck and power you're using? But then, there are these functional realities that, well, the truck's heavier, so now you've displaced load. It can't travel as far, so you have range issues. And then the infrastructure, and I think when we talk infrastructure, we have to be really clear that, yes, it's roads, yes, it's charging stations, but it's also parking when these trucks are being charged. It's repair facilities. And we did a survey as part of the study. And what's fascinating, when we asked our members, how concerned are you about the availability of, the facilities, great concern. The technicians, very significant concern. Well, their infrastructure, that's the human infrastructure to make it go, because we understand that, uptime is key, being able to get timely repairs on the road. And so when we talk to policymakers, and back to your other question, when you're talking about this in a meeting room or a conference room or a legislator's office, it's very theoretical. But going back to that little visit, if you just have them in a truck and you stop and all of a sudden I asked them, I said, where are all these trucks going to stage? We'll look at a fueling depot and go, well, let's say this fueling depot, a small one, has 4 fueling lanes. Well, at 15 minutes charge, you can get 4 lanes times 4 per hour. I mean, that's your max. But if now you've got 4 trucks and they're each taking 3 to 5 hours to charge, where are all the trucks going to park waiting to be charged? So it really hits them fast. But I will tell you, getting the fleets, the drivers, the scheduling, it's a very strategic, intentional process. And hats off to the drivers and the fleets that commit to do it. But I can tell you it's not a bigger payoff. We link back to our report. You got to tell the story in a real way.
Yeah, and the one thing I didn't ask you about and you didn't mention there is you're in Minnesota. It tends to get cold there, as we all know. And we've seen just recently, I know in Chicago and elsewhere, these Tesla vehicles that just have basically turned into, a lump of coal, essentially. They're not moving because it's too cold. That's an issue there in Minnesota as well, right?
Well, yes, we see that in cold weather climates like Minnesota, these big, heavier lithium-ion, heavy-duty batteries, they can lose 40% of their power. Well, uptime is everything. And, and I think we have to be honest brokers. I mean, can you power a truck with electricity? Well, yes. I mean, there are prototypes, but prototypes don't just translate into reality. And so it's back to that. I think one of the biggest challenges is, you watch television today and you will see ads by car manufacturers that will show the next generation vehicle is electric. You can charge it in your garage. Well, they never talk about any of the problem. It's all the beauty. And That's this perception. And again, if you're a policymaker, you're elected, or you're a staffer, you think, well, we can just do this. So again, our report was not meant to just, hey, we're just going to say no, we're going to drag our feet. But the point is, we feel like there's this narrative that what can be done with automotive can be done with trucks. It's just going to take a little longer. And we want to be very clear and say, no, this is a huge lift. So why don't we spend energy now maximizing the internal combustion engines we have, using the cleanest burning fuels, maximize things like renewable diesel and biofuels. Is there a bigger role for natural gas? Yes. And so let's just be honest and figure out how to maximize those and not have government mandates like we see in California that are mandating certain types of vehicle sales, certain types of vehicle usage. Now, California is a different world. I mean, you have ports, you have the sea, you have mountains, you have lots of people. They have huge problems. So, they need to manage their environment, but Minnesota is not California.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, take a breath, I think, was what you said at the top of this. I'm curious, you mentioned, obviously, you talked to your members about this issue in particular. Is this pretty much a consensus? It sounds like most of the people are on the same page here, and it sounds like this is something that maybe, as you're kind of alluding to here, this is something that maybe the free market is going to it's going to have to play out in the free market, it sounds like, if we are going to get to this point where a lot of people think we're headed. But again, take a breath. It's going to take some time, right?
Well, it's going to take time. And frankly, I think most truckers want the free market to operate, but you want new technology to be demonstrated. Well, a demonstration and a mandate are two different things. Mm-hmm. But we know it's going to take massive government subsidies or rebates, incentives, call them what you want, but the public is going to have to pay for the technology capital investment to transition to this widely different infrastructure. And when we look at our members, I have some members right now that are using electric spotter trucks, and they've gotten some grants. So, that's kind of how they got introduced. But, when we have those honest conversations about, well, could an electric spotter truck really work? And really pay itself out with a subsidy? And the answer is, well, maybe it could, because it's a very different application and it's a place to start. And so, we can do those things. But the report also says, hey, let's not game the system to electricity. Hydrogen has a lot of promise for the long-haul sector. Now, it has a lot of challenges.
Yeah.
Making hydrogen and having technology to essentially create these electrical producing factories on wheels with hydrogen and all that. It's doable, but let's not game it to electricity. Let's look at all of these other options. So I'm really proud of our team. We had a task force that had a really nice cross-section. We had fleets, we had dealers, we had repair facilities, we had energy providers, we actually had one of our major electrical utilities, and then we brought in legislators, heads of state agencies, representatives of national organizations. We brought in, again, the electrical utility. We really tried to have a very honest conversation, and we had some very great conversations as a team about what should our report say. We wanted to make sure that we were fair. We weren't using opinion. And so if you go to the full report, which can be found at mntruck.org, look under resources, mntruck.org/resources, you can find both an infographic that has the 12 key takeaways, nice, easy to read form, but there's the full 15-page report that is cited and cross-referenced. And, you mentioned ATRI earlier. We use a lot of ATRI data in ours to confirm it. We added data to it that we were able to capture and use, and we think it'll stand up, to great scrutiny. And again, the goal in the end is to say, so let's have the right public debate. Let's have the right policies being put in place. Let's have the right funding for research and incentives, and let's not game it to a solution that we're trying to leapfrog to. And again, come back to this reality that internal combustion engines are going to be the workhorse for trucking for decades to come. So let's make it the best and cleanest it can be.
Our thanks to John Husladen of the Minnesota Trucking Association. We're headed for a break here on Landline Now, but don't go anywhere. There's much more show to come.
Penske owns and operates some of the best-maintained vehicles on the planet. Our used trucks come with a 5-year maintenance report and pre-sale inspection. So if you're in the market for a top-quality pre-owned truck, look no further. Search our inventory today at PenskeUsedTrucks.com.
Control your toll costs and eliminate tolling headaches with Prepass Tolls. Prepass Tolls means toll volume discounts. Just one invoice for all tolls and fewer violations. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline now. Welcome back. Every week we check in with Marty Ellis, who drives OOIDA's tour truck, the Spirit of the American Trucker. How truckers spend their time is now and has always been a big issue in the industry. And Marty, like most truckers, has spent plenty of time waiting to load and unload. Something he saw recently reminded him of that and got him thinking about topics such as truckers who are paid by the hour with overtime pay and truck ownership.
Carolina west to Denver, up to Bangor, west to Austin, coast to coast, sea to sea, sail on, sail on.
Well, Marty, how are you?
I am lovely, Mark. And you?
I'm doing great, thank you. Where are we finding you at today?
We are in Jubit's truck stop in Portland, Oregon. That's exit 307 off of I-5. They have a restaurant, a bar, a theater, a hotel, and a truck wash, and about 300 spots, parking spots. So they have a little bit of everything here. Haven't been here for a while, so it's great to be here. We just got done with a couple stops that we don't get to very often, and one was up at GC's in Toledo, Washington. Family-owned truck stop, really nice place. Had quite a few visits. One was our board member, Tilden Curl, and appreciate it when our board members come. And then a couple life members stopped in and told me what was happening with them. They're both retired and all, but they wanted to make it down. And I found out that Lynn Paul and her husband, Dan, they do that max mileage fuel catalyst. So whenever anybody's out in the area, they actually will come deliver it to truck stops in their area, at a time convenient for drivers. So they're trying to, kind of stay in the trucking end of it. So I think that's pretty cool. And then we were able to stop. We made a little pit stop at the Space Age in Castle Rock, Washington. And they have an A&W root beer there. They only have a couple of truck stops, and that's one here in Castle Rock and one in Hermiston. But they've been trying to keep some spots available for trucks. This has only been open for, a little under 2 years. But a nice stop, 8 showers, about 70 parking spots. And so really seems like a nice little spot. So if guys are out here in the area, it's I-5 exit 52.
Okay, well, it sounds like you've been to some good places here. That's good to hear. Let's get on to some of the issues here, Marty. And, one of the ones that I think we've talked about just over and over, but there's always some new version or aspect of it, and that is wasted time at shippers and receivers. What's going on now? What's the new wrinkle in this one?
Well, really there's no real new wrinkle. It was just, how certain things kind of bring you back in memory land. And, sometimes it's a smell, some of the time it's a location, some of the time it's a song. And I decided coming from Spokane over to Toledo, Washington, I wanted to go across Highway 12, which goes through Yakima, Washington. And as I'm driving past these apple sheds, it just kind of really hit hard to me. And it's like, I wonder how many hours were wasted of my life sitting at apple sheds, not making any money at all because, back then it was nobody even considered paying somebody for sitting around. So it just kind of hit me hard. And I was able to talk to one of our members out in Washington that he actually is getting paid by the hour and a really decent wage. He's actually getting $33 an hour driving a truck, and he is eligible for overtime after 40 hours, the way that we've been kind of talking about for quite a while, and trying to get that exemption out of the way so that could be more put in place for company drivers. And so it all kind of meshed together, and it was good to hear that there are some companies out there that you can find an hourly job. And one of the things that he was saying was that when he goes up through Seattle, north of Seattle, and then coming back down through Portland and that, he spends a lot of time in traffic. And when he was getting paid by the mile, of course, he was just donating a lot of time away for nothing. And so he finally decided, look, if I'm going to be out here doing this, I want to actually get paid for the time, not just the miles I can drive.
Now, there you go. And honestly, truckers, company drivers should be paid for their time. They should be just like every other worker in America.
Yeah, and it really just kind of hit home that, and I respect him for coming to that conclusion on his own. I never did in my trucking career, just out, going across going over the road. And it was really refreshing that, that there are companies out there. So guys, if you are interested in something like that, go out and look, make phone calls, send emails, make inquiries, and you never know what's in your area. You might find something you really like.
There you go. Well, on the other end of the scale from being a company driver, there's, of course, people who own their own rigs. And you had mentioned something earlier about truck ownership. What's happening there, Marty?
Yeah, lately I've had a chance to talk to a lot of guys that either tried purchasing and running their own trucking company or have thought about it and have not done it yet. And, some of the time you have to talk to those folks and say, look, it's not for everybody. And, just because you don't ever become a owner-operator, that doesn't make you any different, any less, any more than anybody else. It just makes you different. And sometimes it's really just kind of a personal, thought process that you have to go through and see in your own self how much risk that you're willing to take. And if you want to become an owner-operator, you really need to look at your risks out there with trucking. And, of course, with risks should be reward. Right now, it's a little bit tough to find those rewards and all. So, but some people get hung up that, oh, gosh, I should be an owner-operator. Well, not necessarily. Take a look at your own situation and also, if you're married, to make sure that you and your wife are either all in agreement on it or not, because otherwise you're going to end up in a miserable situation when times get tough.
Absolutely. And that's just a good idea overall, is if you're in a marriage, make sure that you folks can work out the big issues like that.
Yeah. And that's why, even trucking itself isn't for everybody, because I've always said you need a strong partner at home. And my wife has always been good about it. She, when I get home, she pretends that I'm in charge of the household, and then when I'm gone, she takes care of business.
I like the fact that you say she pretends you're in charge. That's nice.
Right.
Throws you that little bone there.
That's right.
Well, Marty, we're running out of time here. Do you have any final words before you ride off into the sunset?
Yeah, guys, just be kind to one another and give that guy next to you a break.
Brothers of the highway, children of the wind.
Once again, that was Marty Ellis, who drives OOIDA's tour truck, the Spirit of the American Trucker. You can find Marty's next stop on our show and every day at our website, landlinenow.com. That includes truck stops, truck shows, and other special events across the country. Again, you can find that at landlinenow.com. And you can also find the Spirit's complete schedule at the OOIDA website, ooida.com. That's our program for today. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Capital Reman is your leading source for quality remanufactured engines and components. Capital Reman stands ready to serve all OOIDA members to help reduce costly engine repairs or replacement. Visit capitalreman.com today and use code OOIDA10 to save.
ULSD is hurting your engine. Fight back with Howe's Diesel Defender. Get the most powerful cleaning and maximum lubricity to protect and extend the life of your entire system. At a guaranteed increase in fuel economy, and you can't go wrong with Howe's.
Dispatch, I picked up that load of steel, so I'm ready to roll.
Sounds good. Remember, we're getting paid by weight, so make sure to use a CAT scale.
I wouldn't weigh anywhere else.
Forget miss accuracy, weigh your truck on a CAT scale.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife.
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
chrome,
and I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us!
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit ooida.com.